That is the most incredible thing that I have heard this month. I love that. I did not know that. And that is why what you're doing is so important. Like, I've never read that anywhere. I've never heard. That's a fantastic thing. Thank you for telling us that.
Ciao ragazzi, bentornati su Curiositanic. Oggi video importantissimo perché andremo a parlare di quanti italiani c'erano a bordo del Titanic. Raccontiamo sempre storie dei passeggeri inglesi o americani, quindi è arrivato finalmente il momento di parlare dei nostri connazionali. Ma lo faremo in un modo particolare perché questa volta non abbiamo un ospite, ma sono stato io, ospite del podcast e canale YouTube Witness Titanic. Witness Titanic è un podcast condotto da James Penca, il direttore creativo di Honor and Glory, il gioco in fase ancora di creazione con il quale è possibile esplorare il Titanic in tutto il suo splendore. Lo abbiamo usato diverse volte qui sul canale. James è stato ospite qui di Curiositanic e abbiamo parlato di diversi aspetti, il sensazionalismo della storia del Titanic, Bruce Ismay, tantissime cose. Ovviamente se vi siete persi la sua intervista ve la lascio come sempre qui sotto in descrizione. Chiacchierando tra di noi ci siamo resi conto che su entrambi i lati dell'oceano il Titanic è sconosciuto per diversi aspetti. In Italia, come abbiamo visto diverse volte, ci sono pochissime fonti italiane che ci forniscono informazioni dettagliate e soprattutto accurate della costruzione, della storia del Titanic, i sopravvissuti, eccetera, eccetera. Così come in America ci sono pochissime, anzi quasi nessuna informazione sui passeggeri italiani che erano a bordo. Quando ho raccontato a James alcune delle storie dei nostri connazionali a bordo del Titanic è rimasto senza parole perché non le aveva mai sentite e quindi ha deciso di ospitarmi sul suo podcast / canale YouTube appunto per parlare degli italiani che erano a bordo. Ma non abbiamo parlato solamente raccontato alcune delle storie dei passeggeri italiani a bordo del Titanic, abbiamo affrontato un tema un po' particolare e sto parlando del discorso razzismo a bordo. All'epoca veniva usato questo termine denigratorio italiani per descrivere qualsiasi persona che non avesse avuto la pelle completamente bianca. Ma non voglio darvi altre anticipazioni, quindi vi lascio alla mia intervista per Witness Titanic interamente sottotitolata.
Welcome, welcome, one and all, to another episode of the Witness Titanic podcast, a inquiry of sorts where we interview witnesses of Titanic's great story, from modern Titanic experts to even the survivors of the sinking. Through their testimony, we navigate the uncertain waters of the Titanic legend and uncover what actually happened in April of 1912 so that we might all ultimately witness Titanic ourselves. I've been refining that intro over the last year plus, and I think it's getting pretty good. Folks, I'm James. I'm your chairman for this inquiry. Today we have a very special episode. We haven't had a modern witness for a little bit since Mike Brady joined us a few episodes ago. So very excited to talk with another human being for once, instead of just talking to myself in my echoey inquiry chambers, I guess. I'm thrilled to talk to this gentleman. He invited me on his podcasty YouTube channel, and we had a great time talking. And so I said, you absolutely have to come onto mine. His name is Riccardo Rosi. He is an Italian Titanic researcher, historian, whatever you want to call our group of people, younger Titanic researchers, people who love Titanic and talking about Titanic, who are terrified to call themselves historians. He's got wonderful Italian Titanic content out there, and as you will hear in this episode, it's pretty hard to come by. Ricardo has written 2 books already, Titanic 401 Questions and Titanic Pictures of a Legend, and he's working on a 3rd book right now. So if you are an Italian-speaking person, definitely check out his stuff if you haven't already. Before we dive into the interview, please consider liking, subscribing, following, sharing, commenting, hearting, reviewing, anything that you can do to show your appreciation of the Witness Titanic pod. It does go a very long way towards making this thing continue for many witnesses to come. And then consider joining Patreon if you're interested in that sort of thing, supporting the podcast and getting some perks along the way. Without further ado, I will now send it over to myself an hour ago when I interviewed Ricardo. It was a really great interview, so I hope you like it. Folks, welcome. We are here with a special guest, a friend of the pod, Ricardo Rossi. Did I do pretty good on that? Okay, I did pretty well. Ricardo, thank you so much for joining us on Witness Titanic as a modern 2025 witness. How are you this lovely evening for you?
Evening for me. Thank you for inviting me. It's really an honor for me to be here. I've been following your podcast since episode 1, and I think it's one of the best podcasts or anything you can find on any platform. So congrats for all the work you're doing. And it's really, really a pleasure to.
Well, thank you. That's more than kind of you to say. I really appreciate it. You are coming from Italy. Where in Italy are you right now? Where do you live? Where are you from?
I live close to Rome. It's like 30 minutes drive from Rome. I'm on the beach. So
great.
I'm I'm very close to the capital. And I've been living here ever since. I have few members of the family in Missouri, in St. Louis. So it happened to go from Italy to the States when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not young anymore. So I was able to pick up the language, thank God, because my father pretty much grew up in the States and then went back to Italy when he was around 15 years old. And that helped me a lot into doing the research that I'm trying to do and the information that I'm trying to bring here in Italy.
Folks at home are wondering potentially. So I'm sure plenty of people watching right now know who you are because they follow you already. Mm-hmm. How might people at home know you specifically in the Titanic world?
Okay, so I'm pretty, let's say, new in the Titanic community, speaking on internet, because I've been studying Titanic since I was 10. I'm 38, so that makes a lot of time. But I always had this, not say passion, but more of an obsession with the Titanic. So I pretty much just my close friends knew about this thing that I had. I started doing TikTok just for fun during COVID, whatever. And then the Titan implosion happened. So I said, why don't I just do one video talking about it and talking about what I like? Everything went viral. And then I was like, I see there's a lot of people interested in Titanic here in Italy as well. I never imagined something like that. So I switched my TikTok into talking about Titanic. And then I moved on YouTube. So in Italy, people are starting to get to know me. In the States, I'm not sure because my channel is pretty much in Italian. I had the chance to interview a lot of known people. Like, for example, I've interviewed Simon Matters, which was Robert Hitchens' great grandson.
Right.
I've interviewed Mark Chinside. So I'm trying to do everything I can to bring decent information here in Italy, because unfortunately, it's not a bilingual country. So,
yeah,
and it's a problem because we don't have a lot of books. We don't have a lot of materials to work with. We only have one big historian here in Italy. He was the historian that I looked when I was young. The first books I read was his.
right.
But unfortunately, once you start digging into his research, you start noticing a lot of flaws, probably because the research is a little dated.
Sure.
But he's been going on TV claiming that Titanic was switched.
Oh
And
no.
yeah, so I was like,
And that's your only Italian source of
is the only
Titanic
Italian
knowledge.
source that we have.
That's tough.
Yeah. So growing up, I started reading his books, and I was like an average Titanic enthusiast who knew informations from his books.
Right.
But on my side, knowing English, I started first reading the inquiry. Then I started doing deep research into how Titanic was actually built, because I studied mechanical engineering. I've always been like interested in engines and building stuff. So I do scale modeling. I 3D print my ships. So I started to dig into like the technic aspect of
Right.
the of Titanic. And that's when I started to notice that some things didn't add up with the things I used to read.
From your one source of Italian
Exactly.
Titanic. Yeah. Wow.
And it's a big problem because since, as I said, I'm new, let's say, people are always commenting like, why you're always saying everything that goes against what we've been
Sure.
told.
I get that as well, and I know we share this. Like,
Mhm.
I make a couple videos about how there's really no evidence against Bruce Ismay, really,
Exactly.
that says that he said all the things that people say that he said,
Mhm.
and everyone is confused why I'm always pushing back against these things that have been accepted, and it's well, that's what that's a healthy thing in the historic world. If we watch the same documentaries with the same talking heads, it's partly why RMS Titanic incorporated the president at the time, Jessica. That's why she invited me on the expedition, because she said if the same people go on the expeditions every year, we're just going to see the wreck the same way. We got to get new eyeballs, new brains. And so clearly, especially in a country where you really only had a few sources of Titanic knowledge, it was going to take a bilingual person to bring more research into it. So it's a great service that you're doing for your country.
Thank you. I see a lot of interest in the Italian community, and I get a lot of emails thanking me
Yeah.
because they're trying to understand the other side of the story of the Titanic, which is not the sensationalized
Right.
version of the
Right.
sinking.
Which is what anybody who listens to this podcast, if anything, they're probably getting sick of me talking about the sensationalized. But this is a really great service that you're doing to be the Italian Titanic personality on the internet, because Titanic is just such an international story.
Mhm.
Literally, people of almost any country you can think of were on Titanic and lost their life on Titanic. So Titanic should be an international story, and it almost is. I was shocked to hear that you didn't have a lot of Italian Titanic content growing up. I'm sure the movie was available
yeah.
with Italian subtitles. At
It's
least
all
did they have
dubbed.
Italian voices
Yeah,
dubbed up? And
everything
yeah,
is dubbed. Yeah.
great. So you at least had that to go off of. But yeah, like that was shocking to me, that there might not be, that Titanic isn't as international as I thought. And there were Italian passengers on board and crew on board. And I'm sure growing up, did you have a connection to them specifically? Like did anything about the Italian experience draw you in particular, because that's who you are?
Okay, so the first time I learned about the Italian passengers was through this historian's book. He's really, really good into researching their history.
Mm-hmm.
But the tricky part is that we are not totally sure of how many Italian passengers were on board, because before Titanic, a lot of them were already emigrated to the UK. So
Sure.
on the records, they appear to be English passengers.
Wow. Okay.
So from the list, we know that there were 45 Italians on board, but one, it was a crew member, failed to join. So
Okay.
there should be 44. This 44, 12 were passengers. The rest pretty much all worked in the a la carte restaurant, which was directed by Luigi Gatti, which was an Italian.
Probably the most famous Italian on board would have to
Yeah,
be Gatti. And it,
Italy and food. So
yes, exactly. Italy, food. And then the name Gatti is very obviously Italian to even us in the States. And it also helps that he is one of the few bodies that were recovered, and he's
yes,
buried in Halifax. And
yes,
I was able, anybody who's been to Halifax to see the cemeteries there, if you've been to the Fairview Lawn Cemetery, you've seen where the most famous Italian on Titanic is currently resting, which is adds to his story a little bit.
The trickier part is because on the list we know that these 45 were actual Italians on board, but not all of them were actually born in Italy. So they're listed as Italians, but for example, Victor Giglio,
Mm-hmm.
which was Guggenheim's
Manservant.
manservant,
Mm-hmm.
he had an Italian father and an Egyptian mother, but he was
Wow.
born in Liverpool. But
So what is he? Like that's
he's
fascinating.
listed as
Yeah.
Italian, and that's
Okay.
why it's so fun sometimes to do this kind of research, because I always point out my example, my family. My father was born in Italy, but he went to the States when he was 1.5 years old, and then
Mm-hmm.
lived his life as a little boy in the States, and then came back to Italy when he was 15. So I'll say he's Italian.
Sure.
But his brother was born in Missouri and came to Italy when he was 2 months old. So is he American or is he Italian?
And so you actually being in Italy, being from Italy, that makes it obviously much more special to be reading about these Italian passengers. Because when I would read about passengers, I never, and I haven't really thought about this until talking to you about it. There's no passenger group that I feel particularly attached to. My heritage is my family comes from Slovenia, which isn't too far from you. But there are Slovenian passengers, but Slovenia wasn't really a country at the time that Titanic sank. So there's a small handful of people who were born in places that are now Slovenia, which is great. But there's no information about them for the most part. So there's no group on the passenger list or crew list where I feel a particular attachment to. I love them all equally, I guess.
It's hard to when you say there's not a lot of information about them, and there's not a lot of information about the Italians either, because only 4 survived.
Wow.
So yeah, and one woman which was pregnant, her name was Argene Genovesi, and she named her daughter Salvata, which means saved.
That is the most incredible thing that I have heard this month. I love that. I did not know that. And that is why what you're doing is so important. Like, I've never read that anywhere. I've never heard. That's a fantastic thing. Thank you for telling us that.
There's
Wow.
a lot of weird and interesting stories about this.
Yes, and that's what we want to. That's what we want to get into. I was a guest on your YouTube channel, which was fun, and we talked a little bit about it there. And I was like, okay, well, you have to come on my podcast and talk about some of this stuff. There's some strange Italian stories regarding Titanic. So let's dive into a few. What do you got for us?
Okay, so I'll start by telling you the story of Emilio Portaluppi, which
Please
was
do.
actually a survivor, one of the few male survivors in second class.
Mm-hmm.
So he has an interesting story because he was supposed to go to America on the Oceanic, but he was a famous sculptor. He did a lot of work in Italy, and then he emigrated to the US around 1903. He became quite known in the industry, and as far as we know, he came across John Jacob Astor and Madeline Astor, which apparently they hired him to create some sculptures for their new mansion. They were doing some work on the mansion they had, I think, in Rhode Island. So he changed his ticket from Oceanic to Titanic, and he traveled as a second class passenger. The fun part is because he said that he was so attached to the Astors that he even went and had dinner with them in the a la carte restaurant. I don't know if that's true.
Sounds like a stretch, but we'll
And
let it go for
there
now.
will be a lot of stretches in,
Yeah.
in this story.
So this is something he says, that he had dinner with them.
Yes,
In the
the
a la carte
problem with Emilio Portaluppi is that every time he told the story of how he survived, he changed the story. So we have no clue how he got off Titanic. So.
And as we know on this podcast, anybody who reads the testimonies, the stories change as the years go by, and it's people ask sometimes why I don't do the same treatment for recordings of passengers. Why not play a recording of a survivor talking? Because we have plenty of audio and some video recordings of passengers, survivors recounting what happened to them. The problem is those are all from the 70s and 60s, maybe, and it's been 50, 60 years. They aren't going to remember the things as well as they did in the weeks after. So focusing on the inquiries is great because it's fresh on the mind. They're under oath. They haven't had time to change their story. And it's not an insult to anybody who changes their story. It happens. It's a natural human thing. Our stories change as the years go by. It's a very natural thing. So sorry. His story changed.
Changed a lot because after Titanic he went from Italy to the States quite a few times, but he actually came back to Italy around 1965, and he had this like tradition. So he celebrated after he came back to Italy. He celebrated his birthday every April 15th because he said that it was his reborn.
Right.
But he celebrated his birthday minus 30 because he was 30 years old when he was on Titanic.
Oh, wow.
So every time he celebrated his birthday, he invited friends, journalists, and he told his story.
Okay.
But adding details, taking off details, we don't know. So there are two major stories on how he survived. He might have been probably one of the few survivors that were pulled from the water. So we know that there were 4 people. 3 we know their names.
Yeah,
there were
3 for sure. There's a mysterious 4th. Yeah,
Hoyt, which was a first-class passenger who died after he was picked up. Philipmore was a steward, and then we have Fang Ling. The 4th one might have been him, so Emilio Portaluppi, or Robert Daigneault. Okay. But everything goes in favor of Robert Daigneault because Emilio Portaluppi said that he, in the first version, that he jumped from the deck of Titanic, like 20-meter dive, and he swam for like 2 hours. And then he said that he was pulled from the water from lifeboat 14.
So that would have to be in that final group, because there were other people who, jumped off the ship and were picked up by a nearby lifeboat. But usually when people are talking about getting picked up out of the water, they're usually referring to that last, lifeboat 14, Officer Lowe.
The problem is that he said that in his lifeboat, when he was pulled from the water, there were around 30 to 35 people. And then 2 or 3 died on board the lifeboat after they were picked up. So that leads that
does not line up, right?
Exactly.
Officer Lowe put together a skeleton crew to go back, so he would have been pulled into a lifeboat of 10 people, maybe, or I'm sure the actual number's out there, but I'm pretty sure it's not 30.
Yeah. In the second story, he said that he jumped from Titanic and then he was rescued by a lifeboat which had Madeline Astor inside. So that points to lifeboat number 4, which had 33 passengers on board, and 2 actually died on board. So that might be
that checks out.
But that's why I mentioned Madeline Astor, because he always stated that there might have been something going on between him and Madeline Astor.
It's like a soap opera.
Yeah, exactly. So he said that there was some romance going on, maybe while he was doing this work for their house, or we don't know. But the odds were that he was in the water, and he said that it was actually Madeline Astor herself who told the crew to go rescue him because she was apparently in love with him.
Right. That's a stretch for sure.
It's a stretch.
Next, you're going to tell me that Madeline Astor was actually expecting his child and not JJ's.
We don't know, but
who knows?
Italians can be pretty wild in their stories. So so we will never know for sure. But that's the thing that he always said. I mean, one of the few things he always said.
Right.
Yeah. But we will never know for sure. So we have no clue.
Fantastic. I can pretty much guarantee 99% of the people listening to this have never heard that story. You touched on this story last time we talked, and I had clearly never heard it. It's very fascinating, and it's why the newspapers, we covered this a bunch in the Charles Dahl episodes, that when you dive into newspapers and these interviews that were made in the years and decades following the disaster, there's always a bit of space needed for exaggeration and storytelling, and clearly he's taking it to a new level. Yes, this was something I wanted to touch on before we wrapped up this episode. It's a fascinating thing, and unfortunately there will be people who comment on this video. Maybe they won't, because I'm going to say it now, but anytime I've brought up racism or toxic masculinity, or these words that tend to send certain people over the edge because they feel attacked by them somehow. Like, just because I'm saying we're about to have a discussion about racism on this episode, that does not mean that you, the viewer, are racist. Okay,
No, not at all.
We're just talking about it. There are racists in the world, and that's who we're talking about.
A lot
it's
of
not
them.
you. Good job. So anyway, but yes. So on that topic, back in 1912, as I've said in previous episodes, the racism of the day was to just refer to everybody as Italian.
Mm-hmm.
It was if you had slightly darker skin than all the pasty British and American rich millionaires who were at the time, it was sort of seen as a certain status that if you are particularly a woman of the most white complexion possible and your hands were as unworn as possible, it meant that you had a life of not working. You had a life of staying indoors and resting, and that was a sign of wealth, and that's been the case in many eras of human history. So if you are a passenger in third class on Titanic, or if you're a crew member or whatever, and you have darker skin, you are Italian, and that was sort of a derogatory term, and it appears in the inquiries. So I wanted to ask about your reaction to that, and how what that's like to read Fifth Officer Lowe in his testimony in the inquiry, claiming that a group of Italians rushed a lifeboat.
Yeah, I've been when I started hearing this, all books covered this term, Italians, like a bunch of Italians rushed the deck. And in these books, they were stating that they were probably all the restaurant stuff of the a la carte restaurant that went on deck. Because this historian didn't know this translation issue. This term Italian, I did some research to find how everything began, because I was like, why Italy? Why Italians? So there was always been kind of admiration and aversion between English and Italian and in England or Italy, because there was a lot of immigration coming from Italy around end of 1800, starting of 900, and a lot of us were seen like aliens or not,
of course,
immigrating legally and everything. So what I found out was that it all became by nicknaming this people WAP, WOP. I don't know if it's pronounced WAP or WAP. I don't know. It's the acronym for without a passport. That's how illegal aliens were called back then. But I have no idea how from that it became Italians. But there's always this thing with Italy, you know, every time you speak about Italy or Italians or the mafia or this and that. So, and it didn't change. So I'm telling you, after more than a century, it didn't change. Every time I go to the States and I say that I'm Italian, they're like, "Oh, the mafia." We even have the WhatsApp group that I have with my cousins in the States is called Italian Mafia.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
But everything came out from Lowe's testimony in the inquiry, because he was referring a lot of this Italian, and even got the Italian ambassador a little mad. His name was Guido Di Vincenzo. Because Guido Di Vincenzo, the ambassador, wanted to put his testimony on record. And Lowe was like, hold on a second. I was referring to Italians as Latinos or not British. Yes. I wasn't trying to put like claims or on the nation. itself. But we've seen more than once from Lowe's testimony that he was a little bit racist. Even when he rescued Feng Lang, the Chinese passenger, he almost didn't want to
He
rescue
didn't
her.
want to, yeah, but he did. And
He was shocked
I
when he
guess
pulled him off. He
in
started rowing.
yes,
He was like, "I'll
in
swim
his defense,
100
he
times
was
with him."
he was impressed by the Chinese passenger, which is good, but it's too bad that he had to get to that point where he almost left him behind
Yeah.
just due to that. Yeah, and it's funny. There's a lot of like complaints in the world today that people are too woke. Is of course the word that is just gets under everyone's skin now. And it's funny that Lowe apologized for the things that he said back then, because he was using a word incorrectly. He was blaming an entire population of the world
Yeah.
for what he was seeing. And he wasn't the only one. I mean, we just a few episodes ago in this podcast, I forget if it was Barrett. I think it was Barrett. Yeah, I think so. Anyway, people will remember. There was a witness on this podcast who, in his testimony, also used the phrase that there were a few Italians in our boat,
Yeah.
and I believe it ended up being a Syrian
It was a
passenger.
Syrian passenger.
Yeah, so not quite. But that's just the catch-all term. It's there's always at different times in history, there's always going to be the other group that we don't feel comfortable with, that we fear are encroaching on our neighborhoods and our jobs and all that. And I don't subscribe to any of that at all. In 1912, it just seemed Italians was the group, and that's where the derogatory phrases come from. And, in the United States at the time, it might have been Italians, it might have been the Irish, it might have been just anybody who threatened the group, the normal group, and their happiness and their power. Whoever is threatening that is the group that's going to be the group that gets the brunt of this sort of thing. And then fast forward to today, we're still doing it.
Yeah.
Not to get on a whole political soapbox, I'm not trying to turn this into anything, but today, of course in the United States at least, the immigrants from Mexico are of course the group that we are that are currently the other. And if there was a Titanic disaster today, the inquiries might be, a group of Mexicans rushed the boat might be what was said instead of Italians, because that's just the way it is. And it's a timeless issue. We thankfully can get past those things. At least a majority of the population can get past those things. We go out and we meet the people that make us uncomfortable. We move to cities. Like I moved to New York after college, and for the first time, I was the minority in a neighborhood, and I got to learn so much. I got to hear amazing new music and eat amazing new food, and
cultural exchanges are
exactly.
They make you rich.
Yeah.
Travel, meet new people, meet new culture, eat new food.
Yeah.
Music, everything. Any human contact gives you something that you didn't have.
Yeah.
So that's why I say probably the richest people in the world are the one that get to travel a lot.
Yeah. It's good for us, and it's certainly bad for us to just never leave our like little hometown with the people who look like us and eat like us and sing like us. Like it's maybe not unhealthy, but it's certainly, you're missing out on so much if you don't go talk to that person that is different, and that might scare you initially. And to bring this back to the topic at hand, before anybody thinks that this is unrelated, it's so related. America has been celebrated in the past for being a melting pot of the world, and it's because of Titanic and ships like Titanic that made that possible. Titanic was a true melting pot of countless countries and cultures. And yes, there's these examples of racism, because of course there were, but those people coming to the United States on board Titanic actively bring these cultures together, make the world a better place, make us more comfortable with each other, because we're all the same. We're all just trying to be happy. Okay, now on to my final question, and then we'll wrap this up. I like to ask all my witnesses before we end their testimony with us, just a little palate cleanser. Is there something that you love in this world? Maybe something that you are almost as into as Titanic, but is not Titanic related. What is another thing you can speak on?
That's a tricky question because I have a lot of things that I like to do, but
Right.
One of my favorite things that I do in my free time is scale modeling. So
I see there's a model behind you.
That's the Lego Titanic, but my house is a museum.
Okay, cool.
My background in engineering, so I build them, I put them together. They're like 6 feet models, so they're huge. But it's kind of Titanic related. So
yeah,
I have to switch to something that it's not Titanic related. Yeah. I'll have to go with my job. So I grew up as a gymnast, so I won different national championship. And then after studying engineering, everything just went back to sport. So I became a fitness instructor, personal training. I opened up my own gym. So working out, it's something that I really enjoy, that relaxes me. And as I say, you don't work one day in your life when you do something that you love.
Of course.
So if I have to pick something that is actually not Titanic related, I'll say my job.
That's great. I wish I shared your love of working out. I do not, and it's becoming a problem. The older I get, I need to be more fit. So I will visit Rome again and actually enjoy it. And you can come out and we'll have some wonderful food and you can give me some pointers in the gym. Where can people find you? I know you're mostly Italian speaking content, but you post plenty of visuals of things. So where can people find you out there?
Okay, you can find me on YouTube, searching Titan Rick or Curiositanic. There's a lot of Italian content inside, but most of the interviews that I have with historians are in English. So
great. That's true. Yeah.
You can find the interview, even your interview. It's on my channel, and it's in English with subtitles. But so even English speaking can hear it. I go on TikTok with Titan Rick or Curiositanic as well, and that's pretty much it. So TikTok or YouTube is the same name. You find me anywhere.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. You invited me on your channel, and I was so grateful for the invite. And I didn't think about necessarily having you on as a guest or anything. We didn't know each other too well, but we had such a great talk on your channel. I thought, well, this is a no-brainer. I've absolutely must have you on, and I'm so glad that I did, because this was a great hour. Thank you for being here. We will talk again soon, and keep doing what you're doing out there in Italy and bringing some sensible Titanic storytelling to people who want it.
Thank you for having me. It's been an amazing time. Time flew by, and it was such an honor. Thank you very, very much.
And with that, the witness withdrew. That's it for Riccardo's testimony. We will absolutely recall him in the future to share more Italian stories with us. I hope you enjoyed the interview as much as I did. It was just so much fun to chat about some of these strange Italian connections to Titanic. Thank you for joining. Next episode, we are going to get back into a 1912 witness. I feel like we've been so distracted by the Titan report, and now we had this modern witness. It's time to get back to what really makes this podcast special, which is the 1912 survivors. We have a very special survivor on the docket. It was chosen by my patrons. I do a vote on Patreon every now and then, asking who they want to hear from, and their options this time around were the three wireless operators on the night that Titanic sank. Three of the surviving ones, of course. Harold Bride of the Titanic, Harold Cottam of the Carpathia, and Cyril Evans of the Californian. So next week you will find out who did they pick. It's not much of a surprise, but we'll see you then. I'm James Penka. Be kind to each other, Titanic community. We will see you when our inquiry reconvenes.
Ragazzi, questa è stata la mia intervista con James Penka per il podcast Witness Titanic. Abbiamo parlato per circa 1 ora e mezza, ma poi ovviamente per motivi di tempo abbiamo dovuto tagliare alcune cose, ma le storie che non abbiamo affrontato sicuramente le toccheremo qui più avanti su Curiositanic. Fatemi sapere nei commenti se vi è piaciuta, le vostre impressioni, se conoscevate queste storie e soprattutto non dimenticate di lasciare un like e iscrivervi al canale perché arriveranno a breve moltissime altre interviste a ricercatori italiani, i quali ci parleranno di alcune delle navi italiane più belle mai costruite, tra cui l'Andrea Doria. Quindi rimanete sintonizzati e io vi aspetto come al solito sempre qui su Curiositanic.